If you can actually feel like you help people in the way you sold them, not just in what you sold them, you can feel almost a moral responsibility to get them through the door because this thing will help. However, the way people are sold can help dictate their results with the thing that they paid for. And so if it has an influence, it means there's a best practice. And I always want to be in pursuit of best practices so that people can be helped the most, to feel like it was their internal conviction, and that's why they took action on this, rather than they were challenged and pressured and reduced and made to feel crappy and said, like, don't you think you should change? Pay this price point. That approach has so many challenges around execution, around buyer's remorse or regret. And I want to make sure at all times I am orienting around what gives me the best chance of success around the most amount of people I talk to. Welcome, everyone, to the Close More Sales podcast. If you've ever had a call where everything seemed to line up, you had a great vibe with your prospect, real interest, they had strong pain and everything, but they still didn't buy from you, this episode will change the way you sell. Because today, we're not talking about objection handling. We're not talking about better framing or better hooks. We're talking about something much more powerful. We are talking about tethering whatever it is you sell, whatever it is you offer, to your prospect's identity. And why most salespeople lose deals is not necessarily because of what they said, but because they missed who they were talking to beneath the surface. Because here's the truth. People don't buy your product or service, at least not in the B2C space. People are not buying whatever it is you are offering. Fundamentally, people buy the version of themselves they believe your offer lets them become. And if you miss that, you'll lose people who should have been easy wins because you solved their problem, but never aligned with their self-image. Nobody buys change until they believe that change fits the story they already tell themselves about who they are or who they want to be. That's why people can love your offer. They can nod along the whole time, say the numbers make sense, say you make sense, and still not move forward. It's not that they didn't like it. It's that the offer, the deal, the sale didn't feel like them. There was no identity match, no tether to who they are. So today, we're diving into one of the most overlooked keys to consistent closing, how to tether what it is you offer to your prospect's identity so that when they say yes, it feels like an act of alignment, not a leap of faith. But first, why listen to this show? What's the purpose of it all anyway? The purpose of this show is to empower sales professionals and entrepreneurs to push themselves to grow, achieve unimaginable success without burning out, and ultimately transform their lives. I'm Ian Ross, and I am obsessed with all things sales, and I work with teams across the world to make more money by asking better questions. The most proven path to achieving financial freedom is maximizing your earning potential, and a sales role is the lowest barrier with the highest possible ceiling for entry onto that path. Anyone can become a killer salesperson with the right techniques, mindset, and consistency. And everything we cover on this podcast is geared toward one thing, helping you close more sales so you can live the life you want. And if you'd like to get a sheet breaking down all the things we say on a follow-up call, so you never have to say, oh, I'm just following up or I'm just checking in ever again, text follow up, 2 words, to 33777, and we'll send you a template of what to say on the phone completely for free. Most salespeople try to create urgency where there is none. The best salespeople create identity alignment. When what it is you offer feels like it belongs to the version of the process of your prospect that they are trying to become and who they ultimately feel they already are in a sense, it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like inevitability. And that's the difference between good sales reps and great ones. And today, we're going to walk through the specific identity moments that show up in almost every single sales conversation. And I want you to listen, not just for the words that we'll talk about here, but what they mean underneath, the symbolism, the weight, the emotion, because that is where the real leverage lives. That's where it breathes. If you've heard this one, Sometimes you'll notice that your prospects can be stuck in a loop. They go, I've tried so many things like this before. I don't know if this will be any different. I've been burned before. I've had a bad experience. That's not always just surface skepticism. That can be an identity tension. Sometimes they're not necessarily doubting your product or service. They are doubting themselves. I talked about this on the last episode. What they're actually saying is, I don't know if I'm the kind of person who follows through. They're not always asking, can this work? They're asking, can I work this? Can I make this work? And that's what most reps, that's where they get it wrong. They respond with more logic, more proof, more value, but logic can't fix identity tension. You have to sell the identity upgrade. So when someone says that, I'll often say something like, what I've seen is that the people who get the most out of this aren't the ones who feel like they can show up perfect all the time. They're the ones who finally decide they're done living in that old loop. And the fact that you're even here to me and have tried things in the past tells me that a part of you is already trying to wake up to that. You're not pushing when you do stuff like that. You're reflecting back to them who they feel they are and who they can become. You're saying this isn't about someone else necessarily. It's about finally becoming the person you already know you can be. There's an identity tethering aspect here. It's who you feel you are tethered to what it is I offer. So if someone hops on a call and they say, I've tried so many programs before. I want to believe this could help, but I just don't know anymore. They're not always, and very rarely, in fact, looking for a better offer. They're bracing themselves for disappointment. They've been burned, probably more than once, not just by sales reps who overpromised or business owners who talked about everything they could do. Sometimes they just don't trust their own follow-through anymore. And if you respond with more logic, well, here's why this one's different. Here's our guarantee. What if we lower the price? What if we had a payment plan? You're trying to fix a wound with a pamphlet. What they need is identity alignment. Instead of talking about the program, shift the lens. You say something like, I totally get that concern. Most people who end up getting the biggest results, they didn't start feeling confident. They just decided that they were done living in the same pattern. And I don't think you'd be here having this conversation with me if part of you wasn't already starting to take that lead. I'm not trying to convince someone into my program, into whatever it is I offer, right? I'm letting them reintroduce themselves to the version of them that's been waiting to show up. I'm letting them talk to their future selves. That's not just sales language. That's self-permission language. And that's where a shift can land. It doesn't just change how I close. It doesn't just cause urgency. It changes the very nature of their conviction. When someone talks about proving something to others, this one can be sneaky because you'll hear things like, I need to show my wife I can do this, or my team is depending on me, or I've got something to prove that I can make something happen. At face value, this sounds like external pressure. What they're really saying is, I see myself as a leader, a provider, a decision maker, but I don't feel like who I am right now has fully lived up to that vision of myself. So what do you do in response? You mirror it back. What you're telling me right now, it sounds like this isn't just about money. It's not just about metrics. It's about stepping into the version of yourself that your team or your family or your wife, whoever they mentioned, is already proud of who they feel like they already are. This isn't about proving something to them. It's about becoming the person they probably already see in you that you maybe don't see yourself. Now my offer isn't a solution, it's a bridge. They are the hero of their own story. I'm just showing the path and they're choosing to walk it. So if they say, look, I really want to do this, but my wife needs to know, or I just can't be another risk without talking to her. Or if they say, I need to finally show my team that I can lead from the front. I need to show them that I'm willing to invest in X or pay for Y. At first, again, it sounds like they're trying to shift the blame to someone else. This is internal identity pressure. They've already decided who they want to be, but they haven't stepped into it fully yet. This is your chance to tether what it is you offer to that internal standard. So try something like this. It sounds like this isn't really about your hesitation in making the investment. It's about showing up as the version of you that your team already believes in. I didn't just say, Well, why don't you want to step up? Don't you want to pay for this? Yeah, that's what the money's for. I'm flipping the frame. I'm making them step into the future selves. Instead of making my offer the thing they have to justify, I'm making it the path to the version of themselves they've already been trying to live up to. Now it's not about proving the offer is good. It's about proving they were right to believe in themselves. This is really, really different than how a lot of salespeople sell. A lot of the examples I'm talking about kind of represent some aspects of hesitation in the high-ticket closing space. Because a lot of high-ticket closers, which can have some negative connotation. I know some marketers who deeply dislike high-ticket closers, even though they often rely on them for revenue, because high-ticket closers, people with that title, can get the reputation as being a bit of a diva, as people who were sold a business as an opportunity and now only want to work 3 hours a day and are never willing to follow up with anyone and want the lead to be perfectly qualified and they just have to step them over the one line. That is not all high-ticket closers. That can be a perception that some people have. Some of the mistakes that I see that a lot of high-ticket closers make who are actually getting pretty decent results is they are always trying to challenge the identity of the person to then reframe their identity to get them to want to take action. And a lot of that is because they're selling business as an opportunity. They're selling gain in some way, shape, or form. They're selling making more money. That's a very common thing that high-ticket closers tend to sell because you get a lot of aspiration for that. The avatar that is interested or responding to marketing of here's how you can make more money. Often, not always, because I mean, what is sales training if not helping you make more money? But often don't have very much money to begin with. They often value external validation as a representation of success because they have not yet had success. And so therefore, external validation is their only representation of wealth and success. So they're always looking towards that. And so high-ticket closers will often say things like, hey, with where you are currently, not making the money that you want to make, and your goal is to make this much money, you want to keep things the same, even though this program's way more money than you have and you can't pay for it and you don't think you can use it, blah, blah, blah. But if you're stuck in this circumstance, obviously you have to get out of it. This is powerful stuff and it can work. It most frequently works in that moment of getting them to shift and take action there. Now that is important. However, the internal conviction to feel like it was your idea to pay some high ticket price point or to sell your house at a discount for those of you in my audience who do that, or to do anything that involves a feeling of risk, a feeling of this is big, therefore salespeople are important in that conversation because interacting with another human is really important to get people to feel like they want to take that change themselves, at least at scale. If you're dealing with anything like that, it can be very common to then challenge that person in almost a negative way. And when you do that, they don't feel the internal conviction to stick with it, to get the results, to go forward. They responded to negative questioning about who they are, who they feel they can become, why haven't they made these changes. If you're stuck in this circumstance, don't you feel like something has to change to be able to do X, to be able to make this amount per month? Oh, you want to make $20,000 a month? Well, the decisions you've made so far have led you to having no money. So shouldn't you pay more money right now? Again, this can absolutely inspire short-term action. Plenty of salespeople in the high-ticket space are incentivized in that way. And often, if they're selling a good enough program, there can be enough of a fulfillment that they count on the fulfillment side of what they're offering to be good enough to make up for the way that person was sold. However, I am a huge believer in best practices. And the best way to set someone up for success is not to actually make them feel like they were forced or pressured or almost like an aspect of who they are was reduced and therefore they have to pay a lot of money to come out of that reduction. I actually want them to feel an expansion of who they are. This sounds like I'm using weird words here to explain this. But if it feels like, yeah, I'm becoming more of myself. This is the person I always wanted to be, and now I can take action on it. Instead of, yeah, my identity so far has been crap because here are my results. Therefore, I need to make a change. You can get urgency. You can inspire action with that. You can get the sale. The amount of people who will follow through on what you sell, especially if there's a gain component where they have to work at it. They have to develop a skill. They have to take action. They're not just flat out buying a product. You can often notice that those prospects sold into it have not been set up for success. Their internal compass is not aligned with making progress and becoming the person that they actually need to be able to be successful with that information. They were sold on a you are no good, this is how you get good. And when you do that, when you take that step through that door and you realize you're still just you through the door, you're now just out, whatever, $11,000 or something, $9,997, and you still have to do all the work. The reality is it's rarely the information that you buy that actually gets you success. It's how effective that program is at closing the gap between where you are currently and that information. That's something we focus on a lot as sales trainers. And so, at least it's a huge thing for me. And so, by setting someone up to be pressured or reduced in the way they enter a program, they are less likely to actually get use out of it, which in a very sort of solipsistic, selfish sense for the salesperson also increases the risk of cancellation. Because if they didn't have any money or they didn't feel like they were worthy of doing your program, they probably came in on a payment plan. And if they cancel, now you have to rely on all the aspects of follow-up or reduction or what can we do or I sold them to this company that's not going to screw their credit. Like, you're not helping people if you sell that way. So I wanted to talk about that point there. It is really important to understand, why am I talking about this? Because can you get results by challenging someone and who they feel they are to take action? With certain people for certain products, you absolutely can. To be clear also, there's a great book, The Challenger Sale, which is, most of that study was on B2B salespeople, where it's more impactful because B2B sales often has an aspect of time that is inevitably created because the person you talk to at first very rarely can make the decision themselves. Even if you're talking to the CEO, theoretically, they have to talk to other people to actually ink the deal. And so there's always a time component. So you can challenge someone on what they know and what they're trying to do and give them new information, because new information creates time. Well, in B2B, there's always time, or not always, often time, because there are multiple decision makers, or there's a process or a budget or a way that businesses make decisions. And so there is no instantaneous purchase, at least not at scale frequently, in most B2B sales-focused setups. So as a result, challenging them with new information and educating them about what they don't know doesn't necessarily hurt the flow of the process, because educating creates time, and time is an inevitability in most B2B sales. So there's a differentiation there. I want to do that little caveat, or if we continued on with more examples, because I think it is important. And if you care at all about not just getting paid, but paid in a way that you feel good about who you are as a salesperson, and you are actually able to help people in the way you sell them, not just in what you sell them. Actually, I want to repeat that. If you can actually feel like you help people in the way you sold them, not just in what you sold them, because assuming you are selling someone something that helps them, you can feel, and I do as well, almost a moral responsibility to get them through the door because this thing will help them. However, the way people are sold can help dictate their results with the thing that they paid for. It is not 100% one-to-one, but it does have an influence. And so if it has an influence, it means there's a best practice. And I always want to be in pursuit of best practices so that people can be helped the most, to feel like it was their internal conviction and that's why they took action on this, rather than they were challenged and pressured and reduced and made to feel crappy and said, like, don't you think you should change? Pay this price point. That approach has so many challenges around execution, around buyer's remorse or regret. And I want to make sure at all times I am orienting around what gives me the best chance of success around the most amount of people I talk to. There's that caveat. So let us continue on.
I'm filming this video for the man himself, Mr. Ian Ross. The guy crushes. The guy's the best person in sales I've ever seen. I've invested elsewhere and I haven't got the same results. I've gone from being a seller, making 5K a month, to being a hybrid role, making 11K a month, to now be 4 months down the line from 5K to on a closing opportunity, inbound, full calendar, with the best opportunity, the best offer in my space. OTE is around 20K a month from month 2. So I've gone from 5K to 20K. If that's not a return on your investment, I don't know what is, man. If you're a salesperson and you don't invest in sales training, you're going to get left behind because your job is to be better at sales. And sales training directly makes you more money.
If you like what you just heard and would like similar types of success, text CLOSE to 33777. And we'll see if you qualify to join objection-proof selling. We're taking good sales reps and we're making them objection-proof.
When your prospects are giving you language where they're maybe comparing themselves to others, what that can sound like is certain terms like, well, I've known people who've done stuff like this and they've crushed it. Or, I've seen other people who've joined programs or paid for X and gotten good results or really liked it. I just don't think I necessarily can. What they're experiencing is not jealousy. They're experiencing incongruence. They see the person they want to be through comparing themselves to someone else, but they don't yet feel like they are there yet. So your job in that moment is to close the distance between where they are and who they believe they could be. So you might say, by the very nature of what you're telling me, that tells me the belief is already there. You already see yourself at that level. You just haven't had the right strategy or structure to match the results that. If you wanted to actually change the results, we can change that together. Do you feel like you're the type of person now who is ready to take action on that to change it? I just moved the conversation from should I buy this to is this the moment I step into who I'm meant to be? This is an entirely different close because it comes from within them rather than coming from you. You've probably heard a version of, I know people who've done stuff like this and they've seen huge success, but I don't know what's wrong with me. I just feel like I've been stuck. Okay? They are not stuck in a logistical sense. They're having a identity crisis. They don't believe they are in the same category of who they've seen having success, or at least they don't think they're there yet. There's a gap between aspiration and actualization. And your job in that moment is to collapse that distance between who they actually are right now and who they think they need to be to win at the game they think they're playing. And I say stuff like this, that tells me your belief is there. You wouldn't even be comparing yourself to those people if you didn't already feel in some way, shape, or form, some small part of you belongs in those rooms. What's missing for most people is the process to do it. Do you feel like you want to get that now? I'm not trying to motivate them. I'm reminding them that they already see the finish line in action. They just have to get in the right vehicle to access it. And when that lands, the conversation shifts to, can I afford this? What are next steps? Like, is this even worth it? To, do I want to be this version of myself any longer? And it happens internally without me reducing who they feel they are. Why does this matter? Because when identity isn't tethered, even the best sale, the best offer, the best product, the best service tends to feel like an aspect of pressure. If you don't have it, the offer is a push instead of a pull. It's pressure instead of an invitation. People don't follow your logic when they're stuck. They follow alignment. So whatever offer matches up with who they feel they want to be and are right now and can imagine that, that's what will cause them to act. That's what allows them to take that next step. To get them to do that, you're not overcoming objections with memorized rebuttals, right? That's not how you do that. How you actually do this is catch these moments and help them see through the door by looking at themselves. So what should you be listening for to actually notice this? You don't need to be a therapist to do this. You just need to listen for the emotional fingerprints in their language. So anytime they say something like, I don't want to make the wrong choice, or I've tried this before and it didn't work, or my partner, my spouse, my friend, my mom needs to see that I can deliver. Other people do well. I'm just not sure why I don't. Anything like that, you are in identity tension, and you don't fix that with testimonials. You can, but it's not. It's rarely what's actually fixing it. It's the story they tell themselves about the testimonials. You can actually skip that process by showing them this is about them. It's not about pressure. You're creating a sense of congruence between the aspirational them and who they are now, and feeling like I'm actually already taking those steps there. If you zoom out for a second and think what happens when this gets missed, if you don't notice this, if identity is not tethered, what shows up is prospects saying everything you love to hear and then ghosting you after a great call. They give you delayed versions of let me think about it and loops that never actually close. You'll get a strange feeling like, I did everything right, and yet I still lost this sale. Why? Why if I did everything right? Because you sold to the problem they thought they had, but you didn't connect to the person inside that problem. Here's another scenario. If you walk through your whole offer, everything you can provide, and they nod, they say it makes sense, you even hit on the pain. You show the ROI, and they say back, yeah, let me circle back next week when I run a few more numbers. You might think this is a logical delay. It rarely actually is if they really did like it. It's identity misalignment, and they're afraid to show that to you. What they're really saying is, I like what you said, but I don't yet feel like I'm the kind of person who pulls the trigger on something like this. And so therefore I can't do it right now. And if you push there with more logic, you lose them. If you empathize but don't elevate, you can stall. But if you tether their identity, if you make the offer feels like it fits who they are and are becoming, then they feel like they are following through on themselves. When they say, I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing, what it means is I'm scared of making another decision that proves I don't follow through. What's a bad response to that? You can't make a wrong decision because this is a great program. You're trying to explain there. What's better is a validation first. That's a totally fair concern. I found that the right decision isn't always the safest. And what we found for our clients is for them, it's usually one that matches who they actually feel they're already starting to become. Do you feel like this program could be that for you? If they say, I've tried things like this before and they didn't really work, what it means is I'm carrying disappointment as a armor to represent self-doubt. A bad response? Well, this program's different. What I offer is different. What's better? Man, it sounds like you've got experience in this. You've also got some scars with that experience. And the people who tend to thrive here aren't people who've never failed and are perfect on social media. They're the ones who are done letting old chapters and those old scars define their next one. If they say, I just need to know I'll actually use this, what that means is I've wasted time and money before, and I am scared of doing it again. What is a bad response? Well, we make this super easy to implement. We're so good, don't worry about it. What's better? That makes sense. The question I have for you is, do you feel you're actually in a different headspace now than you were the last time something didn't stick? Do you actually feel almost like a different person, or you're starting to become a different person? If they say, I see how this could help, but I don't feel ready. What does that mean? It means I want to believe I'm the person who can do this, but I'm still hesitating. What's a bad response? There's never a perfect time. You should do this now. What's better? I get how you feel. I find ready doesn't always mean confident. Sometimes it just means willing. The question is, do you feel you're at the point where you are willing to become who you need to be to do this? Each of these isn't a surface level objection. They are identity checkpoints. The moment you reflect back the real story behind the resistance, you build trust. And most importantly, you give them permission to step forward without pressure, without questioning who they are or reducing who they feel they are becoming. To recap what we've talked about today, to make sure some of this advanced stuff, because I was kind of all over the place, to make sure it's actually actionable for you, because you might be like, well, it's a lot. My head is spinning. When they are stuck in a loop, sell the version of them that finally breaks it. When they feel pressure to prove something, anchor what it is you offer to the identity they already believe is inside of them. When they compare themselves to others, reflect back the belief they already have. They just haven't had the structure, the process, the product yet. They're already there. When you're doing this, you are not pitching, you are aligning. You are not persuading, you are guiding. Because at the end of the day, your prospect doesn't actually just want your product or service. They want permission to be the version of themselves they already believe that they can be, but have not yet proven to themselves are worthy of existing as. Give them that permission to step into themselves. And you will, if you change how they see themselves, you will create clients and customers who are excited, genuinely, not falsely, not because you were excited. People who feel seen, who follow through, who refer others. Because they don't feel sold, they feel safe. That's the power of identity tethering. And that's how you actually close more sales. You close it with clarity, with congruence, and with real conviction that you are helping people and helping people in the way you sell them. I'm Ian Ross. This has been the Close More Sales Podcast.